HR can, for any company out there, be a very, very clear competitive advantage if it's taken seriously and if it's done right. Technology is usually pretty quick to advance, and humans maybe not always as quick to adopt. A degree, a job title is a very static thing. We are missing such an immense portion of what an individual can bring to the table. If I only looked at her degree, she would probably very likely be, put aside quickly. We need to prepare our people for it. We need to help them understand how they can stay relevant.
HR doesn't have to have all the answers about the future, but we do need to have responsibility to prepare people for multiple possibilities. Hey there, welcome back to Joey's HR Lounge, where HR thinks out loud. I'm your host, Joey Price, and today we've got a conversation that I think a lot of HR leaders really need to hear, especially if you've ever wondered what your role looks like in a world being reshaped by AI, skills, and constant change. Joining me today is Caroline Hanke, Global Head of Organizational Growth and Health at SAP. Now, what makes Caroline's perspective unique is that she didn't start in HR. She actually began her career in computer science and made a very intentional shift into HR because she saw the opportunity to shape how work evolves in moments of uncertainty. Now, at SAP, she's helping lead a skills-based approach to workforce transformation, thinking through how organizations prepare for a future no one can fully predict, but one that everyone has to plan for. Caroline, thanks for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, Joey. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and I love your personal background because we almost did like a home swap. We don't have to go into all of the details, but it's very cool that the place where I was born is the place where you grew up, and then where I went to school is kind of where you were born. So,
Yes.
sort of home and home swap there, and we both wound up in HR.
Yes, a lot of joint history there. And I think having lived in two different countries, two different cultures, that has shaped a lot of who I am today. I'm sure it's the same for you, Joey.
Absolutely. And random trivia, if anyone wants to know what country we lived in, go ahead and ask us at some point on social media or in the comment section of the video, and we'll tell you. So that's how we'll spark some fun engagement for this chat today. Caroline, let's start with your story because this episode's all about you today. Now, you began your career in computer science, and then you made that deliberate pivot into HR. I've got to wonder, because this is like such a left brain, right brain kind of thing, what prompted that shift, and what did you see in HR that others might have missed at the time you made that pivot?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I do have to admit, moving into HR wasn't as deliberate at the time. It was due to a role that I took as a COO for one of our functional areas that at the time included the HR space. I've always been a people person. I've always loved, to work with many people from different backgrounds. But the actual decision to stay in HR was very deliberate. And that was at the time because I realized that HR can, for any company out there, be a very, very clear competitive advantage if it's taken seriously and if it's done right. And I wanted to at least try.
Well, not only have you tried, you've built a successful career in a thriving organization, and so you're doing something right. And I think there are
We'll see.
clues and keys to success that our audience can pay attention to. And then if we drill down a little bit because you've lived in both worlds, obviously one country and another, but technology and HR.
Yeah.
When you look back on that transition, how do you think your background in computer science shapes how you think about employee experience and workforce strategy today?
I think there's two important things. The first one being, with all technology shifts in the history of humans, we've always seen that technology is usually pretty quick to advance, and humans maybe not always as quick to adopt. I think with the most recent change being AI, we're seeing that that effect even more urgently, even more strongly. I think the technology boundaries that AI could potentially break are huge. But can humans actually adopt AI? Can they get used to AI? Can they actually use it to their advantage? That's the bigger question, and that's what's going to make or break, right, the transformation that a lot of companies as SAP are undergoing. And I think understanding kind of that dynamic from both angles is extremely important. The other piece is I do think that my brain is wired a certain way through my educational background, through my studies, the way I look at problems in terms of a very simple divide and conquer principle, as an example, going through iterations of problem solving, failing quickly, trying again. These are all components that I do believe, coming from the tech background, coming from the computer science, software engineering space, has been an advantage for me. And then, last but not least, maybe to add as well, um, HR as a function itself will become more and more intertwined with the industry, with the business. In my case, working at SAP, that means intertwined with technology, with the products that we create, and understanding those things better, being able to relate to what does the daily life of an engineer at SAP look like. I think, of course, is a huge advantage also that I can bring into the HR space at SAP.
Yeah. Well, let's open up the conversation a little bit, and talk about HR more broadly, and talent more broadly. Our recent research at Jumpstart HR showed that in our Insights at Work report, 40% of respondents say their biggest hiring challenge is finding qualified candidates. And with where you sit in the organization, you're successful in helping not only external candidates but internal candidates find their next opportunity. I've got to think that skills is a big part of that, and it's something that you mentioned earlier. But in this age of AI, with skills mattering more and more in comparison in relation to title and degrees, could you unpack, what it really means to build a skills-led organization and why that shift is so critical now?
No, that's a good question. Joy, you've already given kind of the first hint because a degree, a job title is a very static thing, right? It basically makes the assumption that once you enter work life, your degree and what you have learned up until then ends there, right? And what defines you is basically all packed into that small amount of time that you spent before you entered the workforce. And that, of course, in today's world, with the dynamic that we have, with all the changes happening, not only on the technology side, but in general in the world, the amount of continuous learning that employees, that colleagues have to undergo is immense. And with looking only at the degree, the job title, we are missing such an immense portion of what an individual can bring to the table. So it's a huge lost opportunities for companies to not invest into a more skills transparency across their workforce, because only with that transparency can I really understand what has someone learned throughout the last 5 years here at SAP, or even before they joined SAP in their prior job. What do they bring to the table? How are they upskilling as we speak? And maybe to give a small anecdote that I just recently came across, I also do a lot of mentoring inside of SAP. I was talking to one of my mentees, and she was telling me, Caroline, if I had not gotten to know you, she works in the sales environment. If I had not gotten to know you, no one would understand that I actually bring a lot of HR expertise to the table because I've now done a lot of fellowships. I've worked in HR projects. It's my passion. And she wanted to make that transition into HR. If I only looked at her degree, if she actually, applied for a job in HR, she would probably very likely be, put aside quickly, looking at just her degree and what she brought to the table coming from the university. So really having that understanding of what someone brings to the table and allowing them to maintain that and constantly update that is a huge benefit to the organization and, of course, to the individual themselves.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that's something that is a conversation for enterprise level organizations as much as it is SMB. I mean, we think about the typical startup where there are people who are wearing many different hats. Maybe you have a operations title, but you're doing finance, HR, administration.
Right.
So this idea around skills and discovering people's talents, it's not just for the SMB, but it's also for the health and vitality, and relevancy of the large enterprise. So I love that we're having this conversation here, and it makes me think about something you said in our pre-podcast call, because when we think about the teams that we assemble, the number one thing we have to brace for is what's next. And I
Right.
loved your honesty when you said, no one really knows what's gonna happen next. We can plan, we can make best case scenarios, worst case scenarios, but the honesty in which you said, like, "Hey, we don't know what's coming." It makes me think of our research. We do have a stat that said 1 in 3 organizations have no AI plan, no AI strategy, and that's alarming to me because we're in it now. It's not some theoretical, it's not some um, probability. It's in the here now. So, with all of that being said, I'd love to hear, how do you think HR leaders should think about workforce planning when the future feels so, so, so uncertain?
And by the way, I think dealing with uncertainty is going to be one of the major skills to look out for going forward, because that is kind of the new normal. Um, I do think anyone who currently says they know exactly, what's going to happen in 3 years from now is either really, really smart and I need to meet them, or is not telling the truth, right? Because you're absolutely right. I don't think, and I admitted that very openly, I don't think anybody really knows. And neither do we at SAP, neither do I. And but that also doesn't mean that we can just sit and wait to see what happens, right? Because of course there are certain scenarios that we can paint, certain things that we know are going to happen maybe in the next 1 to 2 years, and we need to prepare our people for it. We need to help them understand how they can stay relevant for SAP and for the workforce, and we need to provide upskilling. We need to provide, the right culture at SAP that they can stay agile, that they can, you know, develop themselves. And that's of course where the topic of skills comes in. But I also told you I am responsible also for workforce planning at SAP. And the way we go about it is exactly as you said. We plan in scenarios, and we try to plan for very different types of futures that we could envision, and what would that mean, and how do we prepare today for these different types of futures. And it's funny because, as you know, SAP is also a German-based company as well, the headquarters at least. So we love to, discuss all eventualities, all potential risks, and prepare for them. And starting to get used to the fact that that is no longer possible, and that we need to become comfortable with that, is not as easy. And I can say that because I am German, and now I took, I think, maybe one of the secrets away from the question you asked in the beginning. But it is something we need to start getting comfortable with on the one side, but also ensuring, of course, that all employees at SAP understand what it will take for them, in the next couple of months, to continue to stay relevant, to continue to learn, and to continue to prepare for the future. So you have to find that balance, and it's funny because often in the process, people will ask me, "So, but what's the target picture, Caroline? What are we can't plan if we don't have a target picture." Well, we have to define different target pictures. We have to define different scenarios, and that's what you have to deal with. And I do believe accepting that, and not trying to create the 110% process and perfect process is also something that takes some time to adjust to, right? So we plan in iterations. We realize, okay, that was the wrong path, and then we try again.
Well, let's unpack what's happening at SAP and this opportunity marketplace that you have. which you alluded to and mentioned. But what's the origin story behind it? Was it this moment of uncertainty? What problems were you trying to solve, and how did the idea of an internal opportunity marketplace take shape? And for those who aren't familiar, who may be tuning in by video or audio, feel free to over explain and explain what an opportunity marketplace is, because that's not a common buzz term. I think that's unique to SAP. So catch us all up on what it is and why it started.
So I think there's two underlying or yeah, angles that we took with the opportunity marketplace. One is, of course, from a company perspective, from a leadership perspective, there's always the question of how do we ensure that we have the right people in the right roles in the right projects. And then, of course, as an individual, as an employee, you're always on the lookout for how do I make sure that the skills that I have, that I can apply them to what I'm doing, that I'm in the right project and the right job. And the opportunity marketplace is where those things come together, right? We can offer different roles, different projects, different opportunities inside of SAP, and we can match our employees to those opportunities and ensure in an agile way that organizational structures set aside, degrees and roles set aside, that we can make most use of the skills that we have inside of SAP and the potential that we have inside of SAP by really pairing two things that are meant to be, so to speak.
Yeah, and that actually tracks well with our latest insights at work research and what people are experiencing as challenges. When I think about the leadership priorities and business pressure that our respondents are facing, 61% said managing cost and efficiency, and 55% improving financial and operational performance. I believe that there is a direct through line between how you prepare your team to win and the results that you get. And so I love the idea of an internal marketplace, of a way of saying, hey, I believe we have some of the best talent that we can put on the field, so to speak. Uh, how do we just all make it work? And I know that's your job, kind of in a nutshell, but it tracks really well with our research and some of the challenges that the HR industry is facing more broadly. Um, so you shared that the skills-based approaches, they open doors for employees that might have been overlooked
Mhm.
because of degrees or career paths. You had mentioned the your colleague who said, "Caroline, if I didn't know you, I may not have been able to go down this path."
Right.
Um, are there other stories that you could share about how SAP is uncovering hidden talent and making it actionable? Um, the people, the technology, how does it all work together to uncover those diamonds in the rough?
It's something I'm super excited about because the opportunity marketplace is only the beginning. What we're really trying to build at SAP is SAP becoming a what we call skills-led organization by 2028. And the idea behind that is, on top of the opportunity marketplace, we basically will have technologically we have like a skills database across our complete 110,000 employees. We use obviously our own solution, our own HCM solution, Success Factors, and inside of Success Factors, there's something called the Talent Intelligence Hub and the Growth Portfolio. And this will be going forward. We're going live this year with a large portion of the employees. This will be our skills database. And what you can envision happening is that we will then use and infuse the skills data into the complete employee life cycle. So I'll give you an example. A lot of companies today, as SAP is as well, struggling to make sure that we have a great, I'll call it succession management process, right? So ensuring that the right people are on the path to succession for the right roles. This skills database will ensure that we have a completely unbiased recommendation, AI recommended even in some cases, recommended succession path for employees and for critical business roles that we have defined. It will give you as an individual, again, AI generated development and learning journeys, right? So we are currently tagging our complete learning offering at SAP because there's definitely, a huge variety of learnings, but most employees struggle because they say, there's so much out there, I don't even know where to start. How can I get a really targeted learning plan for my personal development path? So going forward, we will be able to really automatically generate based on your individual skills portfolio and your development path that you can define inside of the system. It will give you AI generated learning journeys and recommendations for you to execute, and then also AI generated internal job postings as one example, right? So if you're saying, I would love, as to go back to my colleague who wants to switch into the HR space, if she were to define that into her development plan, my next role, I would love, to become an HR professional, then the system will automatically alert her if there are relevant roles out there. And of course, the matching happens on the other side as well with the hiring manager, right? Because the skills matching will show that even though her degree might be in sales, she is a great candidate due to her skills database. So trying to really remove bias. We're trying to really broaden also the pool of potential candidates for all of these roles. And we're providing a very individual and detailed development program and path for all of the employees at SAP. That's at least my vision. We're
Yeah.
not quite there yet. We're in the process of doing this, but I mean, that's what keeps me going every day in a sense of really providing that to all of our 110,000 employees by 2028.
Yeah. Well, as I stated, this is an example of an organization. I have this new mantra of being in a unique seat where I get to see research, and I also get to see reality with just the nature of my role in our business, and to hear stories like this. We are actually meeting those true business needs. It further amplifies the business case for strategic HR and strategic workforce management. And again, with the top two challenges from our latest research being managing costs and efficiencies and improving financial and operational performance, having a human led, human centric approach to that is super refreshing and nice to hear. But for the people who are listening to this and they say, Carolyn, we don't have SAP's leadership. We don't have the budget. I can barely dream outside of my HR department of one to make real things happen. Um, What's a practical next step that you would share with an HR leader to move in a positive direction towards, I guess, broadly speaking, internal mobility, internal skills, awareness, and tracking? How can someone be 1% better after listening to this conversation today? No pressure, but
Yeah,
what?
exactly. It's like, oh my goodness. First of all, I mean, we haven't figured it all out, right? As I said in the beginning, that's why I also say becoming fully skills led, and by that I mean having skills data infused into all these processes from recruiting to learning to strategic workforce planning. That is a huge undertaking, and we're not there yet, right? That we're on the journey as well. But if even looking at where we are today, and we have taken some huge strides, if I could go back and do it again, there would be things I would do differently. As an example, and this is maybe the recommendation to everyone listening, start small. We have 110,000 employees. Trying to roll out things, for such a broad audience is massive. We also try to immediately, again, this is a little bit of the, I think, tech space challenge that we always have. We always want to do things perfect from the start. Um, we wanted to already define, our holistic skills taxonomy. We have a central skills taxonomy at SAP that we base all of these processes on. And if I could go back now, I would probably say, let's start small. Let's start with a pilot in one business area. Let's define for that business area, let's say, the top 5 most relevant skills for the next year. And based on those 5 skills, I wouldn't go for the holistic skills taxonomy, but based on those 5 skills, what are the key learnings for upskilling for those 5 skills? How do we infuse those 5 skills into the job postings that we create? How do we infuse those 5 skills into our learning programs for those individuals, right? Start small, and then expand from there. So it's the typical, I would say, divide and conquer thing. If you try to go full blown, big bang, holistic, you will realize very quickly that there are some challenges along that way, and then you have to go back and redo the whole thing. So start small, iterate, and see what works and what doesn't work in your environment.
Yeah. Well, you're showing the importance and value that HR leaders bring to our organizations is beyond algorithms. We bring a heart, we bring intentionality, we bring strategy, and this is all made for such a refreshing conversation about helping us all prepare for the workforce of the future, which none of us have truly figured out. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways for me is that this idea that, HR doesn't have to have all the answers about the future, but we do need to have responsibility to prepare people for multiple possibilities. And then
Yes.
that shift from roles to skills, from static careers and degrees to dynamic opportunities. That's really where work is happening, and we're seeing that in our research. And I know SAP tracks the multiple pillars of work as well, so it's been exciting to see your data. I also love how you're modeling at SAP internal mobility. It's not just a process; it's a mindset. It's a belief about having the best team on the field and aligning towards those business priorities that we've shared. So truly, I just want to thank you for sharing not only the strategy that you come to the table with, but the stories and the impact and how you're making real life change. Where can people find you or more information so that on the other side of this podcast, they can follow your work and what's happening at SAP?
You can always follow my LinkedIn, which is easy to find. Of course, I also am joining a lot of events that we're driving from an SAP side. Our big customer event coming up just around the corner, which is called Sapphire. And then, apart from that, always feel free to drop me a note on LinkedIn, and I try to reply as quickly as I can. And go into conversations and learn more, because this is, I think, the most important skill of the future is going to be openness to continually adjusting, learning new things. And so anybody that's interested in a conversation, just drop me a quick note.
All right. Well, for everyone listening, thank you for doing so. And we'll include those links in the show notes so that you can learn more about Caroline, SAP, and perhaps putting Sapphire on your agenda. If this conversation got you thinking about how your organization is approaching skills, mobility, or even just the future of work, this is your top. This is your sign. Start that conversation internally right now. Bring this podcast as lunch conversation of, how can we put the best team together that we possibly can. And until next time, this is Joey Price, and you've been listening to Joey's HR Lounge, where HR thinks out loud. See you next episode.
Thank you.